about the male gender, the Y chromosome. One thing, actually not just Y chromosome. It's actually in pretty good company. Well, just how they are curved, it's not how they look like inside the cell. Also, larger chromosomes have to take more energy to transcribe genes and to take more time dividing and replicating. Ready for the male role. Of course, it would be selected out. What did we think it was? What did we think of it before? Think of it before. Let's see some of the rhetoric around.
I rounded up every citizen in the Tri-City area, so I can prove to you there's nothing wrong with the Simpson gene. This is your great Uncle Ted. Alright, Ted, tell me what you do. I ran an unsuccessful shrimp company. So, but you run it, right? Oh, yeah. Okay, this is your second cousin Stanley. I should have used the airport.
It bumped its own universe.
Right?
This is before the cars, their Jeter brothers, half brothers.
I play a millionaire at parties.
Probably should have researched this before they died.
What about his half brother who runs the car company?
What about you? Well, sir, I step in front of cars and do the driver. I make celebrities for money. I'm a person. Just by a manager. My legs hurt. Get it after you leave. Now get out of here. Fine. What do you do, Dr. Simpson?
Doctor? That's right. I'm chief of complicated surgery at the Invasive Care Clinic. You have to if you want to be an architect, or an environmental lawyer, or regional sales coordinator for the third largest distributor of bunk and trundle beds. Oh, did you hear that? Which one? So, all the 60 women turn out okay. That's right. The defective Simpson gene is on the Y chromosome, so only men are
Random mutations can't get passed down to any other chromosomes. Like the X chromosome.
I have a house payment.
Men are actually slowly going extinct. Wait, what? Scientists have discovered that the male-determining gene, the Y chromosome, is so unstable, it's actually disappearing. Wait, so men will completely disappear one day? Yes. In precisely 4.6 million years, men as we know it will cease to exist. Wait, but without men, how will we continue the human race? Women actually have sperm cells in their bone marrow, so we don't even need men to reproduce.
But those are species that are usually parthenogenic species or actually dying populations. It actually damages it saves embryonic gene expression, but glad you're admitting there are not unfertilized eggs. They're sperm-like cells from polar bodies.
The enormous mass up to 91 or 92% of
proteins to create RNA that affect other chromosomes. No, it's not. It's not the smallest of them all.
Finally, finish everything, including the Y chromosome. The chromosome that, unlike other chromosomes, does actually contain as many genes. Its main purpose is to determine growth sex in humans and other similar mammals. And so if the embryo acquires X and Y chromosomes, it technically becomes male because it contains a trigger known as XRY gene. Sex determining region Y protein, that sort of looks like this, is responsible for switching off so-called male genes on other chromosomes. One of the most important ones is known as SOX9, a gene responsible for the development of sex. But this can be activated by other genes in other animals, and so technically this particular protein is not really required, but it seems to be pretty efficient, and that's why the Y chromosome became sort of the feature of a lot of different mammals acquired. Although none of this seemed to have existed approximately 150 million years ago. Back then, X and Y were just ordinary chromosomes, the way they are today in, for example, birds. Birds don't have the same sex chromosomes as us, and there used to be two copies of the Y chromosome that contained approximately
Your WB, the females have the shortening chromosome.
around this time. This is when SRY gene evolved, and that's when this protein became extremely efficient at activating sex genes. And at this point, the Y chromosome started to change quite dramatically. Various types of mutations led to a dramatic change of Y chromosomes. These degenerate really fast, losing approximately 10% of all active genes in a million years, basically reducing the number from approximately
That's cancer genes.
to just 27. Here's roughly what it looks like now compared to this active.
It's like the top of it, the bottom.
Dramatic loss of genes, it was always assumed that eventually you might actually lose Y chromosome completely. I mean, obviously it has the genes required to make sperm, and even some genes critical for life.
Actually, it's mainly most of the genes that make sperm.
Genes exist on the X chromosome as well. Just for the moment,
Not the sperm gene.
do a pretty good job. But one of the main reasons it was so difficult to actually try to read this chromosome or to try to map it is the fact that it's basically full of junk DNA. Nevertheless, the new study managed to sequence
Unrecognized
uncovering
DNA.
that it tends to contain multiple copies of similar Y genes, including genes responsible for sperm generation and genes responsible for testes.
Targeted genome.
Some of these genes prefer
That's called genetic targeting. And maybe how it preserves this. It protects the chromosome is RNAs as a template.
very strange loops where the sequence seems to be inverted, or strange loops where genetic accidents can sometimes duplicate or even erase genes. In other words, its structure kind of makes very little sense.
According to stories,
Somewhat
even
fragile,
told.
and somewhat easy to mutate and potentially make mistakes. It also contains enormous amount of structures that contribute to pretty much nothing. Once again, junk DNA, where there are quite a lot of.
What about the Korean study?
Now we think it's responsible for vision, but at the same time it can technically sense magnetic field as well. And what's even more interesting, and I guess in some sense more comical, is that last year these South Korean researchers conducted. It's responsible for vision, but at the same time it can technically sense magnetic field as well. And what's even more interesting, and I guess in some sense more comical, is that last year these South Korean researchers conducted an extremely interesting experiment. They essentially took a bunch of starved guys, and here we're talking about men, not women, put them in a box, rotated the box around, and had them try to orient themselves toward food. The combination of hunger, blue light, and the fact that they were male allowed them to almost always accurately pinpoint where the food was located. And that is something that's extremely unusual and very interesting. But when the light was not blue, so for example when it was red light, or when they were not starving, or when they were women, they couldn't do it. It was only for starved males in blue light, which for some reason resulted in them being able to pinpoint where the food was after all. Now there might be some explanation to this, that actually viruses or genes that haven't been